The secret to making stunning 3D Gaussian scenes just like this one isn't magic. The secret all comes down to how you take your photos, and more specifically, loops of photos. Let me show you something familiar. A jigsaw puzzle. Imagine each puzzle piece is a photograph, but not just a photograph. It'll have additional information, such as its translation and rotation and relative to all the other photos. And how do you figure out where this piece belongs amongst all of the rest? You start to put them together and find common connections between each one of those. And each time you figure out where one of these belongs, that's called a camera pose. That is its position and rotation in relation to the scene. Getting great camera poses is foundational and key to getting a great 3D reconstruction or Gaussian splatting scene. So let's continue to turn this pile of photos into a wonderful result. Most people take photos like this. They take a step, they take a photo. They take another step, they take another photo. Or they take a video, which is just a string of photos or a string of puzzle pieces. But look what happens. I can bend these pieces. I can bend these string of photos because there's only single points of connection between each one. But with almost a complete loop, we still have a lot of room for flexion. We know roughly the shape of the loop, but it could be much wider or much shorter. We know the pieces, the images over here wouldn't go over here, but we don't know if they're going to be further or closer apart. But watch what happens when we close the loop. Suddenly, it becomes rigid. This is loop closure in action. As you're capturing your images and you come back to where you start, the computer algorithm will say, aha, I've seen that place. I know what connects next to that. And now it can work its way backwards and start to build a rigid shape. But that's not the end of the story because there's still a lot of flexion here. Things can still stray, but at least you know you have a basic loop. But where the magic happens is when we get additional loops. And we're gonna see what that looks like when we start to get more and more interconnected photos. Each new loop adds additional constraints. It adds more camera poses that can be referenced to other parts of other loops, giving you stronger and stronger connection. Think about it. You're building this structure like a lattice, like a building, like a bridge, and it's getting stronger the more you have connected. And as you can see in this, I still have a little bit of flexion. It's not perfect, but let's see what happens when the whole entire scene is complete. Now we have all the loops complete. Look at it. Perfect rigidity. Nothing moves. Every camera pose is in its place where it should be. That's what happens when you have lots of loops, lots of interconnectivity, and that is key to the perfect 3D Gaussian splatting scene. Now let's pivot and let's see what this looks like using real photos in practice. Time out. If you're liking today's visual approach to learning, you're gonna love today's sponsor of this video, Brilliant. Brilliant helps you become a better thinker and problem solver with thousands of visual, interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI. When capturing images for 3D reconstruction, you have to think critically about how each image helps that solution. Brilliant builds on these same critical thinking skills through hands-on problem solving, not rote memorization. So while you're mastering specific technical concepts, you're also developing the analytical mindset that makes you a better problem solver. And I also love that you can access Brilliant not only through a web browser, but also through their mobile app. Because just 2 weeks ago, I was on a long trip to the East Coast and I had a lot of downtime. So I used their mobile app to get better at programming and sharpening some Python skills that I knew would really help me with this sort of learning down the road. And I really liked that I wasn't just completing tasks like writing loops, but actually thinking about how you actually build scripts and not just typing in code. On that note of Python, Brilliant's expanding programming courses are particularly valuable for building logical thinking skills essential in a rapidly evolving tech landscape. Whether you're learning Python fundamentals or developing an intuition for computational thinking, You'll gain hands-on experience with real code and learn how to approach problems like a programmer. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/pixelreconstruct or scan the QR code on the screen. Or you can click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. All right, so now let's get back to the video and see how we can take that puzzle metaphor and apply it in real images so you can go out and capture great scenes today. But before we talk about loops and getting the right overlap and all that, there's some ground rules I first want to talk about that I like to show everyone who gets into 3D reconstruction from images. This will work for photogrammetry and 3D GS. I call these the 3D reconstruction ground rules. You want to make sure every photo has lots of overlap. That overlap allows you to connect those puzzle pieces, those camera images. You'll need to get optimal viewpoints. You want to make sure everything is like focused on a main subject, not just pictures of everywhere. So as you're going around, you like, what are you capturing today? The fountain? Are you capturing, a piece of machinery? Are you trying to capture a room, which is looking out, but you'll be looking across. So figure out what's your focus of your images. You'll need loop closure, which we saw in the puzzle. So make sure every time you're getting lots and lots of loops, you'll need clear imagery. Why clear imagery? Well, if you can't see something in the photo, you can't see it in the results. And if you are doing 3D Gaussian splatting specifically, the goal of that algorithm is to reproduce the scene exactly as it saw in the image. So if you give me a blurry image, an overexposed image, which gets into decent lighting, you're gonna end up with results that are gonna have blurs, that are gonna be, not ideal. So if you don't nail these 5 things, these ground rules, it doesn't matter if you have all the right puzzle pieces, because it's just not gonna work. So this is just an example of an app that has different viewpoints. So if I don't get the right viewpoints, this is a 3D model, but if I just randomly get photos, I'll end up with nothing. But if I get the right photos, I'm gonna have a good result. And if you can tell in that picture, that's right behind me, if I just wave my phone around at random, standing still, I'm gonna get the result on the right. If I get good loops, I get a lot of overlap, I'm gonna end up with the one on the left. And I think I only took a few seconds to capture both of these. You could make them a lot better. So this is where I bring you to EveryPoint's visual guide to camera motions for 3D capture. This is something I developed at EveryPoint, my company I work at. And I am teaching people all the time how to capture these really complex scenes. So we break it down into good camera motions, bad camera motions, and these transitions that you can do but aren't gonna really get you a better 3D Gaussian splat result or photogrammetry result. So let's kind of break these down one by one really quickly, and then we'll jump in and see these images in practice. So the good camera images. First one I call trucking. You're just gonna walk down a part of a scene and you're gonna get photos. Now that's not a loop, but that is getting you great photos that have good overlap. So that could be a video, that could be taking static photos, but you're just gonna move and you're gonna have a good amount of overlap between images. Usually you want like 50 to 70% overlap of the same part of the scene in each photo. There's an arc. So again, now we're starting to look at some loop terminology, but there's an arc. That's a partial loop. So as you walk around, you're going to be getting this curved trajectory. That's great if you're going to be going around an object. Specifically when it comes to Gaussian splatting, arcs are amazing because it gives you a bunch of intersecting viewpoints, and that's really what we want. You really use that trucking motion when you just have to walk straight and there's no other way around it. There's a pedestal. So this is literally just moving up and down the scene. And so you could actually do 2 trucks back and forth and a pedestal up and down, and you got yourself a square or a loop, which we'll see in a moment. So there's different ways to move the camera. And then there's a boom. So think of that as a vertical arc. I'm not going to really go into too much detail on all these. So let's go to the bad camera motions. You stand still and you just take photos of one place. That is not going to work. If there's anything I can teach you at the end of this video is to take loops, but specifically, even more importantly, don't stand in place and wave your phone or camera around. You're just gonna get a bunch of photos from one spot, and we need to be getting more puzzle pieces of that scene. If it's all from one spot, that's not gonna do much good. Plus, if I take a picture and move my camera 90 degrees and take another picture, I can't connect those two puzzle pieces. It has no idea what it saw in one photo to the next because the scene is completely different and you haven't moved. Next one's tilt. That's just a vertical pan. So I'm not going to go too much into that. But again, don't stay still and move your camera. Zooming. So zooming can be a big no-no. If you have the right project, you can get away with zooming with your camera, but it changes what are called those camera intrinsics, what we know about the camera lens. And if you're taking a video and you zoom, that's not great. If you want to get closer to something, just walk in and walk back out. There's transition camera movements. So that's what we said, walking in and walking out. Now, if I have an image of, I don't know, let's say my house, and I take a photo and walk in 5 feet and then another 5 feet, I'm pushing in, I'm getting closer in each image. However, I'm really not getting any additional information. I might get some more details that I didn't see from further out because they were small pixels representing that portion of the scene, but you're really zooming in, pushing in doesn't really help you. Same with pulling out. Like, it does help you get to a different place though. So if I want to do multiple loops around an object, I might do a close-up loop and then a further out loop. Just know that 3D Gaussian splatting, like the post shot and a lot of that, generalizes to like a locked off resolution. So it's not going to like give you crazy results in the parts you pushed in and out of. But you can do these and you shouldn't break anything, but you're not really hurting anything. So as opposed to panning where you might break your solution and get a bunch of nonsense in the end, this is just a way to connect loops. The last two are roll and static. Well, if you're standing still, you're not getting more puzzle pieces. Not going to help you. If you roll the camera on its axis, again, not going to be bad, but just be careful that you're not rolling the camera and introducing camera blur, things like that. So, just kind of stay on an even axis if you can. But you can turn, some of these will let you turn the camera 90 degrees if the logic knows that a camera can turn 90 degrees. So with that basis in mind, anytime you capture something, be thinking, I want to be moving across the scene. I want to be moving in a circle around that scene. I want to be creating loops and getting more puzzle pieces. So we're going to start looking at some of these examples. I'm going to show you starting out with a few images, that single trajectory, and you can see that they're connected, but it's not as strong. And then we're going to move to a more complex scene that has several loops, and you're going to see that connection, that net that's going to hold this all together. And then lastly, I'm going to show you that scene that we showed at the very intro. That was a crazy scene. You can actually download that data today and play with it. But that scene was a lot of loops, and I don't have an easy way to show you the connection unless I process the data all over again, but you'll get a good understanding of what it takes to capture a scene with lots of loops. So I'm going to kind of bounce between these and show you what those all look like. Okay, here's my first scene. It's a fountain. You've maybe seen it in other videos of mine. And I just took a sequence of 65 images in, I wouldn't say quite a line. Obviously, I was moving around the fountain. I was arcing, but it's really just, think about it as just perhaps one side of the puzzle. So as I'm taking these puzzle pieces, I'm just building part of the edge. And they're gonna be not too far off because I didn't move too far. The further I move off from the origin point, the more that these can stray. So if I move into COLMAP, which is a great way to visualize these puzzle pieces, you can see I have all these images. They're side by side, but I want to see how they connect. How do they connect like a puzzle? There's some things I can look at that are really interesting in this. If I go to my database management and I go to my images, I can click on one of these and show overlapping images. If I just bring up one of these, show the matches, you can see there's these two puzzle pieces and they have a lot like pulling them together. So this is probably small on your screen. I'll make it a little bigger, but think of it as like those are the parts of the puzzle that are interlocking and it's grasping on those. That's great. And you're going to have less of that as you get further along, but you can also visualize this on the screen. So now on my screen, I'm showing all of the image connections. It's really hard to see because there's so many of them, but there's only a few connections from the start and end. And the stronger this web, the better. But these are all connecting pretty much horizontally. We don't know if these are off. There's a little bit up and down in my gate, but the more of these connections throughout the scene, the better. We would want tons of them. So now I'm going to show you this same scene, but where I walked and did 3 separate loops to get more and more of these connections. And think about this. The more of these, the better the scaffolding. This looks great, but wait until I show you even better. Okay, so now here's full 2 loops around this fountain. I wished I had more for this example, but at bare minimum, 2 loops. This is good. Some of these photos are looking higher, some are looking lower, and there's a lot of connection around this whole thing. So I got all these pieces, and you can tell there's like a horizontal connection and a vertical connection. So this is at minimum what you want when you walk around. You're completing that loop. You're getting the loop closure. You're getting a good result. And now moving to post shot, here's a different scene where I have lots of loops. So let me turn off that radiance field, and I used a drone, and this is where drones are magic because you can do loop after loop and they can be more or less vertical. And this one wasn't perfect. I had blurry imagery, but it still was able to pull all these cameras together. And if I turn that radiance field back on and turn off the cameras, I got some really cool details in here, and things are really accurate. There's not a lot of weird things happening in the scene where you're going to get floaters and things like that, because that's usually because your camera positions aren't perfect. So this looks really good. Now keep in mind, if I looked at the excavator from top down, it would have looked good, but I didn't do a loop up top. So you can't just make up data, but getting these loops means I have lots of good data and I can move my camera up and down and things don't start to look funny. So this is what to expect. This is what you want. You want lots of loops around it. You're seeing that when you get more loops, there's more connection and you're gonna get a better result. I want to show that scene that I showed at the opening of this video. Now this is I don't know if they call it open source scene, but on LinkedIn, I'll link the post where the guy Andre had put these out for people to download and to use for non-commercial use. These are people who want to use it to educate or test on, and you can see how amazing his capture was with loop after loop, and you got all the puzzle pieces, and you can see exactly how good that can look. Okay, so here's that wonderful result that you saw at the start. It looks amazing. If I look at it from all these different angles, things just look correct. And this is perhaps one of the best scenes I've ever seen captured with the drone. It's really good. You know, you can come in here and you can see, I think there's maybe a DJ moving, but pretty much everything's in there and you don't have a bunch of floaters. It's just a great scene. And so while this looks good, my thought is, how is this captured? And he does give us the COLMAP data. So if I pull that open, it's gonna look crazy on your screen if you download it and launch in COLMAP, but here it is, and it is quite the intriguing scan. What do you see? Loops, lots and lots of loops. Well, I will have to literally reprocess all this to get that connectivity graph. I don't feel like I need to show you that to understand all those puzzle pieces are there. And if you zoom in, each one of these is not necessarily looking like at the same part side by side. They basically, looks like they flew the same path multiple times, looking in different directions. And then they added all these puzzle pieces from top down. They have some of these vertical pieces, and they're just thinking it. They're just gathering as many pieces to get this nice, rigid, complete picture of this scene. So what happens when you get all these loops and all these image angles and everything? Well, you get this, where you can look anywhere you want and things just look good. Now, we don't see like a lot of glass, which does help with reflections, but there still is some reflective surfaces that looked really good. So that's what to expect when you take a bunch of loops. I can look at it low like this, it's gonna look good. I look at it top down, it looks good. There's really not an angle I can find looking at the center of this that does. This is what you expect if you just capture tons and tons of loops. have lots of connection. You don't have any bad geometry, you don't have any bad angle views, and you end up with an amazing 3D Gaussian splat scene. So this is something I've done new. I have not done props. This was all new, and I want to say huge thanks to my son Gavin, who helped me put this whole entire video together. He helped me build the puzzle. But you know, I sometimes feel like the best way to understand how this technology works and why we need camera positions and all that is through using props and understanding theoretically how this all works. There's connectivity graphs, bundle adjustments, all these things that you can learn about. But really, if you think about it, it's just like you're building a lattice structure or a puzzle, and the more connections you get, the more rigid everything is, the more perfect it is. Because in 3D Gaussian splatting, if my camera isn't aligned correctly, things just fall apart. So with that, I really hope you learned something and that you decided to subscribe to this channel, because I am trying to grow it so people can learn about how this technology works, how to start using it, and get better results, and maybe even try a new project that you want to explore for yourself. So with that, I will see you guys in the next episode. And this is One Piece. I hope you like that, Gavin.